All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really powerful argument about what truly drives sustainability. And spoiler alert, it might not be what you think.
It really all comes down to this one simple question. And right now, there are two completely different answers fighting for the top spot, competing for our money, our policies, and our future. So on one side, you have this idea of sustainability through red tape. The big idea is, let's fix the huge companies we already have. On the other side, you've got sustainability through economic disruption, which basically says, forget fixing the old guys, let's unleash new players to make them totally obsolete. In this explainer, we're going to unpack both of these and see which one actually holds water.
Okay, so first up, let's talk about the approach you hear about all the time, the one that dominates the headlines, trying to reform the very companies that, let's be honest, are often the source of the problem.
On the surface, this makes a ton of sense, right? You just get the biggest players, the giant oil companies, the legacy automakers, and you use regulations, you give them subsidies, you create these big global groups to get them to change their ways, you ask them to be a part of the solution. It sounds great, but does it actually work?
Well, here's the thing. The evidence we're looking at suggests this whole top-down thing is, well, it's pretty much broken. It bumps up against some hard economic truths. First, you've got this principle of creative destruction. Basically, new tech replaces old tech, but the old companies are almost never the ones to lead that charge. Then there are the incentives, which can totally backfire. R&D credits often just help big companies protect their existing turf instead of creating something new. And finally, you have carbon lock-in, where fossil fuel subsidies create this massive wall that makes it nearly impossible for renewables to get a fair shot.
And get this, it actually gets worse. Some research shows large companies do this thing called innovation-stifling hiring. They're not hiring brilliant innovators from startups to use their ideas. They're hiring them to take them off the board, to neutralize a threat before it grows. The result? A 6% drop in that inventor's output. Innovation is literally being bought up and shut down.
And this isn't some academic exercise, okay? Look at this number. In the US, policies designed to prop up the old fossil fuel giants put over $250 billion with a T in new clean energy investments at risk. The red tape, designed to help, ends up being a roadblock.
Okay, so if the red tape approach is a dead end, what's the alternative? This brings us to the other side of the coin, this raw, kind of chaotic, but unbelievably powerful force called economic disruption.
The idea here is simple. It's not about forcing change with rules. It's about a new technology just being so much better, so much cheaper, that it just wins. Think about how smartphones totally wiped out flip phones. Nobody passed a law, it just happened. And this process tends to follow a predictable pattern, an S-curve, where it starts slow, then just explodes.
And you know what's really wild? When governments try to jump in and help this disruption with more red tape, they can actually screw it all up. There was this fascinating case in the Netherlands where a super complicated solar subsidy program ended up making solar more expensive and actually slowed down adoption. People just didn't trust the government to stick with it.
But in the meantime, what was happening out in the real world without all that meddling? The global market just did its thing. The cost of solar panels absolutely plummeted, down 80%. The market, when left alone, achieved what the complex rules couldn't.
And this really gets to the core of the whole argument. Real, lasting, and fast change. It doesn't happen because we guilt people into doing the right thing. It happens when the new thing is just the smarter, better, cheaper choice. Period. Now, if you want a perfect, almost painful example of what happens when a big, powerful company tries to fight this type of disruption from the inside, we have to talk about the ghost of Kodak.
This story is just a classic business school nightmare. Kodak literally invented the digital camera. In 1975, they had the future sitting right there in their lab. But what did they do? They buried it. They were making so much money on film, they were terrified of killing their golden goose. Even years later, when they finally had a decent digital business, the old guard managers folded it back into the mothership to cut costs, and they suffocated it. That's the red tape mindset in action, and it led them straight into bankruptcy.
So, you've heard the case for red tape, you've heard the case for disruption. Where does that leave us? Well, the conclusion from our source material is pretty blunt.
Let the dinosaurs fade, and let the disruptors thrive. The point here isn't to be cruel, it's to be realistic. We're wasting precious time and money trying to force these giant, slow-moving companies to change in ways they're just not built for. The source compares it to trying to teach a dinosaur to fly. It's just not going to happen.
So instead of that, the source proposes a totally different mission, a simple 3-step plan. Step 1,
Find the real game changers, the little startups with the brilliant ideas. Step 2, give them the fuel they need. Fund their growth. And step 3, and this is maybe the most important part, just get out of their way. Let them compete. Let them win.
And that leaves us with a really challenging question to chew on. In this whole fight for a sustainable planet, have we been putting all our energy in the wrong place? Perhaps the single most effective, most sustainable thing we can do is to stop trying to reform the old and just clear the path for the new.